Leroy, always good to have you on, sir. Afternoon. When you first joined up to the Met back in the day, you must have been in a very small minority of black faces in the Metropolitan Police.
Yeah, it was about 1 to 2% at the time in 1983, and it was quite static until McPherson inquiry, when we start to see performance indicators for recruitment, retention, progression, and it moved in the first 10 years from 1999 to 2009 from 2% up to 12%.
Wow.
And so that you saw progress, but because you had independent oversight to monitor how those performance indicators were being implemented, because what gets measured gets done, and chief constables were held to account, including the commissioner.
Sure. But as you know, Leroy, I mean, the recruitment drives to try and get non-white faces to join up have been huge over the years. They're still running now. If you go to any police force website, any region, any particular area, whether it's British Transport Police, the Met, Cumbria, it doesn't matter where it is, you'll see those drives, and they've been going for years. So what's gone wrong?
It's not just we're not getting people in. It's the fact that they're not staying. They are people who are black and minority ethnic origins are 4 to 5 times more likely to leave in the first 2 years than their white counterparts. So and that's due to the hostile environment, the cultural environment, and especially if you speak up for yourself, you can be really in for a really hot time, similar to what I had to do when we set up the Black Police Association. So as a result of that, people will observe that you don't treat your diverse personnel right, and so they're less likely to join because you're not seen as an employer of choice. So and then also they might be subject, and so they might also be subject to racial profiling in stop and search, and they're thinking, well, you don't treat us right as a member of the public, and you don't treat your personnel right, and there's an inextricable link how you deal with those things around race. You'll get this problem where people are not joining, and if they do join, they're not going to last long.
So you're saying, Leroy, that within, as an example, then within a police station, canteen culture, if you like, that a black officer might feel uncomfortable amidst largely other white officers, which sort of suggests that uncomfortableness would be because of a racist component?
It can be racist. It can be the fact that they suspect you. When I joined, because I was a scientist before I joined, they thought, well, why did you join? Or you only got promoted because you're black. Or you only got in because you're black. All of these sorts of things, and it's obviously the canteen culture of the 80s when I joined had reduced. You're not hearing the N word or the W word, but it's more insidious. It's more subtle. It's a drip.
That would be an extraordinary risk, wouldn't it? I mean, you'd have to be a particularly stupid officer to be playing out your racism, even if it is subtle. It doesn't take much to find yourself in front of an inquiry.
Yeah, but it needs the supervision and leadership to hold you account.
I guess my point, Leroy, is maybe it isn't that. Maybe there's some other reason.
Well, there's too many reports, including this one, that shows that the racial element is an issue for the Met and other constabularies internally, in terms of the culture around recruitment, retention, regression, and also externally around stop and search and other police powers. So those things are well documented, and to say it's anything but race is really fooling yourself.
Yeah, I mean, it's extraordinary that that's the place you're suggesting we're at. I mean, this is, years after McPherson, at a time when the sensitivities around inclusion, diversity and inclusion have never been as great as they currently are, particularly in public areas like policing. That is still going on is, I think, to many people, they will be surprised at that. Some might not even believe it, Leroy.
Yeah, because there's a lot of people in denial. You see, the thing is, McPherson did progress. But since this government took over in 2010, all of that progress has leveled off. In fact, the look and feel of policing in a lot of ways for a lot of people reminds them of a pre-McPherson era. So if you don't monitor things, you don't keep the pressure on chief constables and the commissioner, things will roll back to what it was.
Why under this government would that have happened? I mean, Theresa May was, in the last 10 years, Theresa May was the Home Secretary who pretty much talked down to anybody who thought stop and search was a good idea.
And she was ostracised for it. Well,
that's because some people still think it's a good idea.
Yeah, but she got a lot of hostility from the Federation and other staff associations saying that she's politically correct, gone mad. She was the last person to really say we have to hold police constables, chief constables, and other and the commissioner to account. And unfortunately, you don't see Priti Patel doing that. You don't see central government doing that. And if people are not getting monitored, as I said, if what gets measured gets done. If people feel they're not getting monitored around progress on these issues, just like they monitored for crime and clear-ups and everything, it won't be done. And that's what we've got. And that's why we'll be talking about this for another 10, 20 years and be saying they're even falling further short of the mark and being a reflective organisation.
Leroy, thank you. Leroy Logan, former superintendent in the Met. He was the former chair of the Black Police Officers Association, with us here on Talk Radio. I mean, I find it extraordinary when I've done bits of work with the police, as many of you know, whether chairing debates and meetings and conferences for them. I'll be doing another one in October. So I've been in on many of those meetings when they talk about these kind of issues, when these issues come up. And it seems, and I'm not a police officer, and I'm not a non-white person, so I can't have a full dog in the race on either side of this, I suppose. But as an observer, I would find that it would take my belief system to the outer limits of incredulity to imagine that there is an underpinning of racism in the kind of canteen of the average cop shop that is responsible for the lack of retention of non-white officers, as distinct from there might be another reason. There could be also the fact that we are currently living in a culture where we are literally teaching people, particularly young people. I mean, if I was a young black kid of 14, I'd be reading some of the pages and commentators on social media and even on mainstream media. I'd be thinking it's not even worth trying to go out there and get a job, because according to some of these characters, I might as well be living in Mississippi in 1957. I think if you throw that message out there, the drip effect of that, you start talking about microaggressions. Anything that makes you feel uncomfortable could be racism. Anything that makes you think that you've been passed over for promotion is probably racism. Anything that makes you feel like you're having a bad day. In fact, anything you want to feel. What we've done is almost legislated having a bad day and replacing that with an ism. So, yeah, if you're feeling rubbish, it's probably because of racism, rather than you're just feeling rubbish. It's a bit of a shocking day. And I fear that's the territory we're in. Again, I cannot speak for the police. I cannot speak for anybody who's not white, other than to display my utter incredulity at these kind of findings. Could there be another reason? And it should also be said, by the way, that the idea that because there's X amount of percentage of people who are this colour or that background, that would all be replicated in every institution is simply not true. I mean, this year we'll have 22,000 people crossing the channel. So there'll be 22,000 more people who are not white, at the very least, in this country. And those people, let's assume they all got documentation to stay in the UK. They would be included in that figure because they'd be part of the wider non-white population. So you have to there are other factors afoot here. I don't know the answer, but I'm intrigued in your suggestions on it, that's for sure.
I only ring in now and again when I'm riled, and I'm riled. So forgive me. I spent over 30 years in the police and did an awful lot, both internationally and nationally and locally.
Sure.
And I have to take issue with Leroy, who you were speaking to just before the break, who talked about how awful things were for ethnic minorities within the police service. An absolute load of rubbish.
Go on.
Over those 30-odd years, I've seen a lot of sexism in the police. You know, I won't deny that. Sexism has never been great in the police. You know, the usual sort of thing that when a new police officer female turns up on the block and the sergeant shouts, "Get the kettle on, love," is a very common phrase in the police. So I won't deny that. But I've never seen...
I'm sure even that probably doesn't happen now.
Well, possibly not. No, in fairness, I mean, I left a few years ago, but I mean, I take your point. But it was prevalent, so I can't deny that. But homophobic and racist, I do not agree with at all. And it seems slightly odd. I mean, the Black Police Association, of which there's one in every police force, to me, I'm not going to say is racist, but the very nature of having a Black Police Association, when actually we're all the same, I find quite anathema. And you tend to find that if you set up an organisation, Ian, then it has to prove itself.
So you have to come up with things to talk about and raise.
You know, there is that. And to be blunt, Leroy did very well. He became a superintendent, so that's sort of £80,000 a year. So he's not exactly doing too badly. Yep. And I find it quite offensive that people like him say that there's problems within the police force. Now, going back to my own force, which shall be nameless, but I'm sure you can guess, a few years ago, with the best of intentions, the chief constable decided to have a real drive for ethnic minorities. And we worked very, very hard because particularly the Asian community, many of the parents there don't want their children to be police officers. They want them to be doctors, you know, something with a real profession. Being a police officer is actually a lowly profession in many Indian communities. So we pushed an awful lot, and we got a lot of black officers as well from a particular area in my force, which has a very high number of black community. And within 2 years, all of them had left. Not because they weren't competent, not because they'd been bullied, but because it wasn't for them. And it was because the force had made it so easy for them to come in. They didn't really want to be police officers, and they realised very quickly that it wasn't for them. So
why would there be I mean, I don't know, you probably can't even answer this, David, but why would there be a difference between, you know, a white bloke starting and a black bloke starting, and one statistically finds it's for them more than the other?
Yeah, but the interesting thing, Ian, is all police officers have to do a 2-year probation. Now, within that 2-year probation, you do an awful lot of training, but you can actually be got rid of at any point because, quite rightly, if you're just not up to the job, and not everyone is, then the force needs to be able to say, thanks for coming, but, you know, you're just not right. You're just not right for it. Ironically, an awful lot of white officers fail that. But what we don't do is we don't sort of concentrate on those people. Right. We concentrate on the black officers.
Got it.
Ergo, it must be racist.
So you think there's more to this story than just the Leroy position on this. David, I cut in, sir, for no other reason than time, but thank you for that. David in the Wirral, his experience of being in the police service, very much different to Leroy's.